Good morning, students. Welcome to the subject of environmental science. I wish you all a very happy new year. May the coming year be full of good health, and may the pandemic end as soon as possible and we all come back to normal, so that the offering of the life can be enjoyed in the best possible manner. So with this wish and prayer to Almighty, we shall start this session of environmental science as the first session of the BBA students SEM 1 after the Diwali break. Alright, we are already dealing with unit number 2, and that is natural resources and wealth. We are dealing with the A part. The A part, or this session, or maybe the unit, consists of these many content or these many topics, introducing the topic of, say, natural resources, meaning and definition. We have seen with the types of natural resources, and we have also checked out with the exploitation of the resources. As far as exploitation of resources are concerned, we are done with the introduction, but the rest of the 3 portions will be dealing in this unit, right? Let us just refresh quickly what is natural resources. We all know that the Earth's biosphere is gifted with extremely diverse kind of environment, which provides countless goods and services to humankind. What is natural resources? We have been gifted by Almighty. We have been gifted by Mother Nature with so many diverse kind of goods and services that are so much helpful to humankind. Without them, almost our survival is not possible. Any component of a natural environment that can be utilized by man to promote his welfare is considered as a natural resource. That means any component, anything which is available in the nature, right, and a man utilizes for himself, for his welfare, for his well-being, those things can be considered as natural resources. The natural resources can be anything like substance as energy unit, or natural process or phenomenon, anything which is happening in the nature wherein our interference cannot be there, we cannot interfere, rather it comes up naturally, then those things can be considered as the natural resources. It can be land, soil, water, forest, grasslands, etc. Right? Some of the resources like water are important component of the life supporting system. Besides being source of food, fodder and shelter, natural resources also provide with entertaining opportunities, comforts and even inspiration to mankind. Such natural resources have been exploited by man since the beginning of the civilization, or even before. That means, what are we trying to understand here is, what are natural resources? Natural resources are all those things available in the nature, available in the environment, which we use for our purpose, which we use for our well-being, or for our satisfaction of our different needs, right? It may be food, it may be shelter, it may be anything which may be providing us with the luxury goods. Everything that we get it in raw from the nature can be considered as natural resources. Our interference cannot be there. It is natural, જે કુદરતી છે, જેની મેળે જ આપણને મળે છે કુદરતમાંથી, and we cannot interfere. We just get it as the gift from nature. Those can be considered as natural resources. Now, these natural resources have been exploited by the human beings greatly, right? Since civilizations, since we started living on the earth, we have exploited the resources, we have used the resources, but this exploitation, these resources have been overused after, in the last a few centuries, right? When people or the population started growing, we started growing with the technology, we started using the nature and the sources of nature to its best. We have also started exploiting it, we have overused them also. That's a major problem that the earth faces today, right? So initially, when the resources were abundant, as I told you before, the use was not much, and natural resources were available in the abundant, means મબલકમાં ખૂબ બધું પુષ્કળ હાજર હતું, ત્યારે it was not a problem, right? But during the last few decades, human population has increased considerably, causing the serious damage or destruction to the natural resources. We all know, but as the population explosion is there, our needs have increased, our basic needs comes up from the nature, and that is why the nature's resources have depleted or it has reduced, and that has created the problem. Thus, natural resources can be defined as the resources that exist on the planet independent of human actions. That means all those things that are available in the nature, in the on the planet, right, but we cannot interfere, they are independent of the human actions, they all can be considered as the part of natural resources. These are all such resources that are found in the environment and are developed without the interference of humans. That is what I told. Thus, we can understand that natural resources are naturally occurring material that are useful to man or could be useful under possible technological, economical or social circumstances. Means whatever we get it from the nature, we can use it for a technological purpose, for economical purpose or for any social living. When we are trying to use these natural resources which arise naturally in the earth, they are occurring naturally on the earth, right, all those materials which we put into use can be considered as the natural resource. It includes all the supplies that may be drawn from the earth, such as food, building, clothing, materials, fertilizer, metal, water, geothermic energy, whatever we are getting it from the earth, right, in a raw form. Maybe then we need to process it and we bring it to our need or our use, but initially we get it from the nature. They all can be considered as a part of the natural resources. Thus, we can say that natural resources are useful raw materials that we get from the earth and nature. Moreover, they occur naturally because we don't interfere in its occurrence. They occur naturally. They are considered to be the natural resources. Instead, we use and modify natural resources in ways that are beneficial to us. Instead, what we do, we modify it, we bring it to our use. The trees may not be of the direct use to us, but yes, the wood that we get from trees, right, that we use it for different purpose, so we bring it or we modify it to our use. The backbone of human development and need satisfaction is natural resources, we know. Hence, materials used in by the human beings to make various products come from the natural resources. Means from smallest pin to high-tech machines, whatever we get it, ultimately we get it everything from the nature, and that is what is considered to be natural resources, right. In the previous lectures, we have seen the types of natural resources. They can be on the basis of its origin, its renewability, or it's on the state of the development, right. So this we have already seen. The exploitation of the resources we have already introduced ourselves to, but we will check it out. The next topic that comes up is exploitation of resources. Types we have seen. As I told you, there are basic three types: on the basis of origin, on the basis of renewability, or from the state of development, right. Then what comes up is exploitation of resources. What is exploitation of resources? Exploitation એટલે શોષણ થાવું, right. So શોષણ in the sense, here what we are talking about is natural resources. When we make overuse of these natural resources, it can be considered as the exploitation of resources. The natural resources are vital for the survival and development of the human population. However, one must understand that these resources are limited by Earth's capability to renew them. Fresh water, forests, and harvesting products are renewable, provided that exploitation does not exceed regeneration. That means, see, fresh waters or forests or maybe the crops that we harvest, that we get it, again we can reuse them, again we can regenerate it, and we can make to use. So exploitation or its use does not exceed its regeneration. Regeneration is on a continuous basis, and that is why we can use it more and more time, right. The exploitation of natural resources is the use of natural resources for economic growth, sometimes with a negative association of environmental degradation also. On the contrary, ઘણી બધી વખત આપણે બધા જ નેચરલ રિસોર્સિસને ઓવર યુઝ કરીએ છીએ, જે ગતિથી એ પ્રોડ્યુસ થાય છે, રીજનરેટ થાય છે, એના કરતાં આપણે એની યુસેજની ગણતરી વધારે હોય છે અથવા તો એની ગતિ વધારે હોય છે. એટ દેટ ટાઈમ what happens is it's the exploitation of resources. We use the resources for our economic growth, right? So at times what we do is આપણે એટલું બધું એને રીયુઝ કરવામાં પડી ગયા હોય છે કે અલ્ટિમેટલી we degrade the quality of the environment, or the environment is getting degraded somewhere or the other. What we need to protect, that we don't protect it and we overuse it, and it cannot be regenerated in a small period of time. Thus exploitation of natural resources emerged in 19th century due to fast industrialization. ખૂબ બધું ઔદ્યોગિકરણ થયું, ખૂબ બધી નીડ્સ વધતી ગઈ, કન્ઝ્યુમરિઝમ વધતું ગયું, પોપ્યુલેશન વધતી ગઈ, and that led to overuse of the natural resource, right? It gave a good pace to extraction and processing of raw materials. That means we started extracting from the nature, we started getting it from the nature to beyond extent. So what happened, because of the mining, steam power, machinery usage of all these things led us to overuse of the natural resources, and that is what is known as the exploitation of resources. Now here comes whatever up till now what we have discussed was just the connection of what we are going to do today, right? Now today what we are going to focus is, now we know what is exploitation of resources. Exploitation of resources means overusing of the natural resources. એનું જે રીજનરેટ કરવાનો જે પેસ છે, જે સ્પીડ છે, એના કરતાં આપણે એની વપરાશની સ્પીડ જ્યારે વધારી દઈએ છીએ ત્યારે it is said to be exploitation of resources, right? Now what are these reasons? આપણે શું કામ આ કરવું પડે છે? Why it is so important, or why we are taking up with the exploitation of resources? Why there is exploitation of resources? Then here are some 5 basic reasons, right? Number 1, increase in use of technology, making resources to be extracted quickly and efficiently. We make use of technology, right? Technology help us to make the use of the things faster and greater. Now what happens because of this? Because of this, what we do is we started getting things quickly, we extract things quickly, so we get the things very quickly from the nature. So we try to use technology, and using this technology means we are exploiting the nature somewhere or the other, right? Say in case of say cutting down the trees, if with the saws, if we would have been cutting the trees, then it would have been just 1 or 2 trees a day. But with the use of technology, what we have done is we have taken up the machines, we have taken up the electric cutters, and what happens because of that, the more number of trees can be cut down in a day. So due to use of, this is simple example, so due to the use of technology, what happens is there can be more amount of deforestation, which leads to say desertification at the times. What happens is deforestation comes fast, means the number of trees being cut is very fast. So what happens because of that, the forest reduces to greater extent. So this is just an example to say that this is the reason why there is greater exploitation, because we use technologies. So what happens because of technology? Technology makes our work quick and easy. So we what we do is we make more use of technology, and that leads to the exploitation of resources, right? Next reason is an increase in population. As the population increases, as the number of people on the earth increases, we directly or indirectly highly depend on the nature to get our basic things, right? Food, shelter and clothing. For all these reasons, or for all these purpose, we need to have the nature, earth, which helps us. So what happens is that increases the use of natural resources. So if the population increases gradually, there will be a lot of usage of natural resources, and that has led to the exploitation, and that is why it can be considered as one of the reasons. The third one is heavy materialistic consumption. Heavy materialistic consumption means what? As people increases, or as population increases, what happens is their need increases, right? There is a culture of consumerism, means we want more and more things from the market, and to satisfy that those needs, what happens is we need to produce heavy materialistic things, right? Like say jewelry, or coming up with the advancement in the automation, right? So we want everything to be high tech, and that leads us to the heavy materialistic use of whatever the things are getting produced, and those sources are lying in the nature, and that is why that leads to the exploitation of resources. The fourth one comes up is intense competition has led to overuse of resources, means the competition has increased. What happens because of that? You always or the marketer always tries to strike a balance between demand and supply of the commodities. So what happens? That leads to intense competition, and in this race of competition, all the types of natural resources are being exploited. Everyone wants to get the resources from the nature, and they want to make the use of them in producing various kinds of items to meet the demand, right? So what happens because of that? It leads to the exploitation of resources. And the fifth one that comes up is the unequal use of resources. That means the nature has gifted all the regions and nature with the different types of natural resources. Now at some point of time we can make more use of resources where the nature has gifted more, so the exploitation of resources may be more, right? Or at the other time, what happens is that abundance gets depleted, it gets decreased. On the other hand, there are regions which are having too much of natural resource, but the use cannot be there. So what happens is this leads that where there is more pressure of population, where there is more industrialization, the resources will be used faster, and that leads to greater exploitation. So where the technology is being used, where there is resources are there, then we make the use faster, and that leads to the greater exploitation of the resources, or maybe the natural resources, right? So unequal use of resources is there. જ્યાં ઓછું છે ત્યાં પણ કદાચ વધારે પડતું જો વપરાશ હોય તો તમારી નેચરલ રિસોર્સિસ એક્સપ્લોઇટ થવા લાગે, ડિક્રીઝ થવા લાગે, ઓછું થતું જાય. સો દેટ ઇઝ these are the 5 reasons. I repeat one more time. What are the reasons of exploitation? Number 1, increase in the use of technology. Number 2, population. Number 3, heavy materialistic use or consumption. Third, there is cutthroat intense competition, and the fifth one is unequal use of resources. That means if there is no parity, no equality in usage of the natural resources. One nation if says that this much is only the natural resource to be used, the other will not continue in the same way. So what happens is whatever the resources are available, the way it is being used, and there is unequal consumption or use of resources that leads to the exploitation ultimately. So these are the reasons that leads to the exploitation of the resources. If we move to the problems, what happens if the exploitation means overuse of resources? We have seen 5 reasons why the exploitation happens. Now what we are seeing are the problems. કે કયા problems ઊભા થાય જો exploitation of resources થતું હોય તો, right? Then in that case, the first and the foremost here which we get to study is deforestation. Deforestation means cutting down of the numerous trees, right? ઘણા બધા ટ્રીઝને આપણે જ્યારે એકસાથે કટ ડાઉન કરીએ છીએ, that is said to be deforestation. So what happens is we clear out the trees, we remove the trees from the forest, and thus for making different items out of it, for making life easy for us, we intentionally destruct, we intentionally remove the forest and trees. And what happens because of that? That leads to the deforestation, right? જે forest છે એ થતા જાય છે, deforest થતા જાય છે, that means ઓછા થતા જાય છે. So it is like it is taken up on a continuous basis. So what happens because of that? The land in the long run becomes barren, right? Leaving us with many problems related to ecosystem. We know that forest or the trees are only the source which provides us with oxygen, right? So if these trees are cut down to a greater extent and population increases, our demand for, or maybe our need for oxygen increases, but the source from where we get the oxygen decreases, like forest, then that creates the problems for us. That is what is known as deforestation. So that is a major problem that comes up due to exploitation of resources. Next comes up is desertification. Desertification means wherein the લેન્ડ ઇઝ ગેટિંગ ટર્ન્ડ અપ ઇન્ટુ ધ ડ્રાય લેન્ડ. દેટ મીન્સ જે લેન્ડ છે એ રણમાં ફેરવાઈ જાય છે, ડ્રાય લેન્ડમાં ફેરવાઈ જતી હોય એને ડેઝર્ટિફિકેશન કહેવાય. રાઈટ. દેર કેન બી ટુ કોઝિસ, ક્લાઇમેટિક વેરિએશન ઓર હ્યુમન એક્ટિવિટીઝ. ક્લાઇમેટને લીધે એ રણમાં ફેરવાતું હોય, ઓછો વરસાદ આવવાથી રણમાં ફેરવાતું હોય અમુક રિજન, તો એને ડેઝર્ટિફિકેશન કહી શકાય છે. અગેન હ્યુમન એક્ટિવિટીઝને લીધે, સપોઝ કન્ટિન્યુઅસલી ઇફ યુ કટ ડાઉન ધ ટ્રીઝ or if you take up with the intensive farming, then what happens is at point of time the land or soil loses its humidity, it loses its fertility, and what happens because of that, the natural vegetation does not come out, or maybe it is not there, and it transforms the land into such a kind of land which turns up into desert, and it is no more suitable for agriculture. એટલે એગ્રીકલ્ચર માટે કોઈપણ ટાઈપની વાવણી માટે એ લેન્ડનો પછી ઉપયોગ થઈ શકતો નથી, અને it turns up almost into dry land, or it comes up as the ડેઝર્ટ લેન્ડ, એન્ડ દેટ ઇઝ વોટ ઇઝ નોન એઝ ડેઝર્ટિફિકેશન. તો આ બીજી વસ્તુ, આ બીજો પ્રોબ્લેમ ઊભો થઈ શકે with the increase or with the exploitation of the resources, because we start cutting down the trees, we don't plant it, we don't replant it, and that leads to the actual problem of desertification over a period of time. આ તાત્કાલિક ન થાય, તરત ન થાય, immediate નથી, but it turns up into deserts over a period of time. Third one comes up is extinction of species. Extinction એટલે ખતમ થઈ જવું. End of something is said to be extinction. Here we are talking, અને species એટલે પરજાતિ, જાતિ પરજાતિ of so many different types of animals or organisms. So what happens because of that, that so many group of organisms have already lost themselves. That means they are not having the survival. Even the last individual of the species have lost its life. So what happens because of that, the species are getting ruined. જે જુદી જુદી જાતિ પરજાતિ છે એ ઓલમોસ્ટ ખતમ થતી દેખાય છે. More than 99% of all the species, amounting over to 5 billion species that ever lived on the earth, are estimated to be extinct. That means 5 billion species છે ઓલરેડી ખતમ થઈ ગઈ છે. રાઈટ. અને કેટલી બધી એવી સ્પીશીઝ છે કે એટલી બધી જાતિ પ્રજાતિ છે, બિકોઝ ઓફ ઓવર હાર્વેસ્ટિંગ, બિકોઝ ઓફ પોલ્યુશન, બિકોઝ ઓફ હન્ટિંગ, બિકોઝ ઓફ ડિફોરેસ્ટેશન, દે આર લૂઝિંગ ધેર લાઈફ. સો વોટ હેપન્સ ઇઝ, આ એક પાછો બીજો પ્રોબ્લેમ છે કે જેને લીધે આખી ઇકોસિસ્ટમ છે એ ડિસ્ટર્બ થઈ શકે છે. દેટ ઇઝ એક્સટિંક્શન ઓફ સ્પીશીઝ. એક્સટિંક્શન મીન્સ ધ એન્ડ ઓફ સમથિંગ, રાઈટ, અને સ્પીશીઝ મીન્સ કાઇન્ડ ઓફ ઓર્ગેનિઝમ ઓર ટાઈપ ઓફ organisms. Right? Next comes up is forced migration. Again, we try to understand both this, I mean the whole term, in two parts, forced and migration. Forced એટલે બળથી, અને migration એટલે એક જગ્યાએથી બીજી જગ્યાએ મૂવ ઓન કરવું. Right? So forced migration is what? It's a movement of a person or maybe group of persons away from their homeland, right, and or maybe native region. Now it can be migrating from same country, that is internally you get migration, or it may be due to any natural calamities or due to any natural disasters. What comes up is forced migration is there. That means આપણી પ્રવૃત્તિને લીધે અથવા તો ક્લાઇમેટિક ચેન્જીસના લીધે અથવા તો કોઈ ડિઝાસ્ટરના લીધે જ્યારે કોઈ પણ એક ટ્રાઇબને, એક કમ્યુનિટીને અથવા તો ગ્રુપ ઓફ પર્સન્સને એક જગ્યાએથી બીજી જગ્યાએ ફોર્સિબલી મૂવ કરવું પડે છે, જવું પડે છે, લિવિંગ ધેર હોમ કન્ટ્રી, લિવિંગ ધેર હોમ ટાઉન, લિવિંગ ધેર હોમ વિલેજ, that is a part of migration. That is said to be migration. So when we start exploiting the resources, જ્યાંથી જીવતર મળે છે જે લોકોને, જે ટ્રાઇબને, એ લોકોને ત્યાંથી એ જગ્યા છોડી અને they have to start searching for their survival somewhere else, and that is what is said to be forced migration. And the next comes up is soil erosion. Soil erosion એટલે ઉપરનું જે લેન્ડ છે અથવા તો જે upper layer of the land is getting washed away or maybe blown away. That is said to be soil erosion. The top layer soil that gets washed away or blown away, that is said to be soil erosion. This is a very serious problem for farmers because the soil that gets eroded or eroded, the crops get the best food out of it. and what happens, the food will not grow, the farmers will find the difficulty in growing the crops here. So if the topsoil of the top layer of the topsoil of the top layer of the land gets is the most fertile, and if that gets washed away, that gets eroded, then what happens is it will create number of problems for agriculture, right? તો પેલી જે ઉપરની સોઇલ છે, ઉપરનું જે માટી છે એનું ધોવાણ થઈ જાય, તો that leads to lot of agricultural problems, and it's a major problem for farmers. Now it may be due to many reasons. Soil erosion can be made because of many reasons. It can happen like flooding, right? જો પૂર આવે તો આખું જે ઉપરના લેયરનું જે સોઇલ છે એનું ધોવાણ થઈ જાય. There may be destruction because of wild winds blowing, right? Or it may be because of deforestation, or maybe falling of trees. The soil loses its humidity, it loses its compatibility, and what happens is it gets eroded. So એને લીધે પણ ઘણા બધા પ્રશ્નો ઊભા થઈ શકે. So there can be the soil erosion due to water also and wind also, right? So that leads to the again a problem for the people around. Next concept is oil depletion. ઓઇલ ડિપ્લીશન એટલે કોઈ પણ પ્રકારની વસ્તુનું ઘટવું, રાઈટ? સો ઓઇલ ડિપ્લીશન ઇઝ વોટ? ડિક્લાઇન ઇન ધ ઓઇલ પ્રોડક્શન ઓફ અ વેલ. દેટ મીન્સ એક આપણને ખબર છે કે તેલના કૂવા હોય, રાઈટ? અને આ જગ્યાએ કોઈ પણ ટાઈપનું કન્ટેમિનેશન થાય છે, ડર્ટ, વોટર, એર વગેરે બધું ભરાય છે, તો એને લીધે વોટ હેપન્સ ઇઝ ધ રેટ ઓફ લ્યુબ્રિકન્ટ ડિગ્રેડ્સ. દેટ મીન્સ જે ઓઇલનું પ્રમાણ છે અથવા તો ઓઇલની જે ગુણવત્તા છે દેટ ગેટ્સ ડિપ્લીટેડ, એન્ડ વોટ હેપન્સ ઇઝ વી ડોન્ટ ગેટ ધ ઓઇલ. વી નો દેટ ઓઇલ ઇઝ ધ મેજર સોર્સ ઓફ એનર્જી, right? Oil provides us with 40% of traded energy and 90% of transport fuel, and it is very very important for agriculture also. Thus if oil depletes, there are major problems faced all over the world. All over the world people faces the problem, and even the ecosystem gets disturbed. So that is the problem number 6. Next comes up is ozone depletion. Ozone layer, I think we all know about it. Ozone means what? The layer that it's a belt, or it's a layer that protects us from protects the earth, right? The whole planet earth is being protected by these belt of say ozone layer, ozone gas. Now what is its work, or why it is so important? Because ozone layer is such a layer which provides us like a shield. It is like a shield to us. shield against what? એ પ્રોટેક્ટ કરે છે આપણને ક્યાં? કોનાથી? અલ્ટ્રાવાયોલેટ રેડિએશન્સથી that emerges from the sun. જે સનમાંથી અલ્ટ્રાવાયોલેટ યુવી રેઝ જેને આપણે કહેતા હોય છે, એ જે એમિટ થાય છે એને કોણ બ્લોક કરે છે? ઓઝોન લેયર. એન્ડ ઇફ ધીસ ઓઝોન લેયર ગેટ્સ ડિપ્લીટેડ, there are so many facts, and we have seen in, if you are watching the National Geography channel or maybe any other channels related to environment, then you must have realized and you must have heard in the say such kind of channels, or maybe have read somewhere in the different articles in newspapers or magazine, that day by day ozone layer is getting deteriorated because there is a lot of polluted gases and chemicals like chlorine and bromine that actually damages the ozone layer. It creates the holes in it, and what happens because of that? These chlorofluorous kind of carbons create that is being emitted through the industries or through any other reasons. They are getting a kind of creating a kind of damage to the ozone layer, and there are holes that are created in the ozone layers. Now these holes, what happens because of that? These holes let the ultraviolet rays get on the planet earth, which are very harmful to the people on the earth, right? So that creates a real problem. So these type of rays actually even causes the skin cancer, or maybe the cataracts, or maybe harming the animals in the different ways. So the ozone layer that gets depleted due to these kind of gases emission is again one of the major problem that happens when we extract or when we exploit too much of resources, right? So that is about the ozone depletion. When we move on to the next, it is said to be increase in greenhouse gases. What happens? What are these greenhouse gases? They are being such kind of gases that are being emitted or that are being given out because of the human activities, like say burning of the fossil fuels, maybe for the electricity, maybe because of the heat and transportation. These type of gases get released, right? And what is its speciality? The greenhouse gas is such a kind of gas that consumes most amount of heat. So what happens is the heat gets consumed there, and it creates lot many problems for the ecology to survive. Thus, if we increase the greenhouse gas proportion in the atmosphere, it may lead to many problems. So it is very important to control these greenhouse gases, right? Because they have the capacity to hold heat, and if they hold heat to a greater proportion, then what happens is the planet earth is getting heated more. That leads to so many problems. Then the glaciers or maybe the snow cladded mountains are getting melted, we have heard many times, and because of that the water, the amount of water on the earth increases. Already 3/4 part of the earth is covered with the water, and if there is more amount of water, then the day is not far when the land portion of the earth will get immersed into the water. And these may be the long run process, but yes, it is created because of this greenhouse gases. So this leads to actual problem to the world or maybe to the nature because of the exploitation of resources. Next comes up is extreme energy. What is this extreme energy all about? It is considered as such a kind of energy which is new, more intensive. It can be, and most importantly, it is environmentally destructive. That means when we use this kind of energy, we extract this kind of energy, then it is actually very destructive to the earth. The methods such as tar sands, right? Open casting method, say mountain top removal, deep water drilling. These are all hydraulic fractures or maybe breaking of these elements. They are considered to be the source of extreme energy. And when these extreme energy is being used or being extracted over a period of time, then it is very very harmful to the nature earth, right? And this will lead to damage to both the society as well as the environment, and that is why this extreme energy is also creating the problem. The 10th and the last one that comes up in the series is said to be water pollution. We all know that whatever the industries or whatever the usage of things we have, or whatever the disposal of the water is, the water gets contaminated in the lakes, it gets disturbed in the lakes. So many chemicals are being thrown in the lakes, rivers or oceans, or maybe the groundwater is getting infected. And what happens because of this? The water actually gets polluted, right? Around half of all the ocean pollution is caused by the sewage and the wastewater, which is actually alarming. We should be very very careful while disposing the water effluents from the industry, because ultimately where we dump is getting contaminated. જ્યાં આપણે એ વસ્તુને ડિસ્ચાર્જ કરીએ છીએ, જવા દઈએ છીએ, એ આખા વોટર બોડીઝ છે એ બહુ જ હાર્મફુલ થઈ જાય છે. ઇટ ઇઝ હાર્મફુલ ટુ ધ લિવિંગ બિંગ્સ ઓલ્સો, એન્ડ ઇટ ઇઝ હાર્મફુલ ટુ maybe the life around in the aquatic life also, and it is harmful to the maybe the animals who survive on this water. So water pollution is also the major problem which arises because of the too much of exploitation of the resources. So these are the problems that we have dealt today. There are 10 types of problems that arises because of the overuse of the resources. We are moving towards the last part, right? Maybe this part we will take it to the next lecture, because it needs a lot of description. Then these we will see it in the next lecture, and we'll try to see what type of usage of technology is and what it tries to create as the impact. So this we see it in the next lecture. For now, it's end of part 3, wherein we have seen what is exploitation of resources in the continuation, what are the reasons of the exploitation, and what are the impacts, that means what are the problems that are created. The next part, the last part of this A section, we'll be seeing it in the next session, that is how the technology and use of technology creates the impact on the natural environment. So by the time we meet next, it's a goodbye. Take care. Thank you.